So MG Rob back with you, and today we're back on the 59 MGA Coupe that I'm going to be turning into a fastback. Now today's video is going to be mostly about actually the thought process of going through to try to refine this thing to the point where it's something that I can actually build rather than just a really rough proof of concept that I've started with just throwing this on here. So what I did was I put some white melamine scraps back here to help you see here. What I got is we got this TIG welding wire. I tack welded two of these together to make a longer piece, because this stuff you can take and you can bow it and get and actually see stuff like the roof line here. Now this thing isn't actually giving me quite the line I'm looking for, because it's turning out to flatten out a lot right here, and it's not giving me the consistent bow I'm looking for, but it's getting me close. So we can look at the roof line here, so you can visualize it without the dips. And the nice thing about this is we can look at this here and say, this is our line. We can actually take this and, you know, do stuff like this with it. And so what if we bowed this a little bit more, stand back and look at it and play with that. I'm not quite getting, like I said, this isn't quite getting me exactly what I'm looking for, but it's getting me in the ballpark. All right, so I took that rear window mock-up out of the way so I can get in here and not be hitting it with my window assembly here. Now these are the windows we're thinking about using, and one of the biggest problems is going to be that this is a fairly straight line, and it's putting this point, the best places to put it are putting this point ahead of the crotch right here in the rear fender here. Now, I've been playing here with some lines, just trying to get something that's going to work. Because one thing we notice on these cars, if you really take a close look at them, is right here, when they come up, it actually, back in here almost, it actually dips down a little bit, creating a pocket that water, it can actually hold water here if your welting is actually sealing it. So my thought here was to help with all this line and stuff, we're going to change the shape of this crotch a little bit. And bring that up to where it actually sheds the water off a little bit, and then reshape the edge of this here a little bit, try to get a line where I pull this crotch forward a little bit. And I might even take this line here, which is the edge of the fender, and section the fender and move that forward a little bit. And that'll, you know, maybe somewhere around in where this tape line is, pull that forward. That'll make it easier to take this and kind of flare that out a little bit and blend it all, so that when we get this, if this is the fender line, is say something like that, roughly, it puts that a lot closer to where it doesn't look quite as weird, but it'll take a bit of finesse and a lot of thinking and playing around and tweaking to get it to look right. So one of the other things I have to deal with this window is the actual shape of the window this way and the shape of the car. Because if you notice, the MGA has a curve, comes in and then right here. And that is actually making placing this window a bit difficult, because the only way, if I pull it in to where I'm not encroaching over that line, then it's pulling this in way too far. So my thought at this point would be to actually make a new fender line here. So what I did was I took, once again, one of these rods and just kind of worked it and said, well, what do I think is going to come here? Got a piece of tape running down through here. So if I cut the fender right along roughly where this tape's at, haven't decided yet, right across here, then put a whole new mounting flange onto the fender, and then create a new mounting point onto the car, basically by using this attached to the car, is work the inner fender well and create a new mounting flange here. And then this whole back panel will then come off of this line up to wherever the trunk lid actually ends up being. And then this up to the window. So I think that would help make this whole thing come together a whole lot better. So back to the actual roof line here. Now, since this span here, it doesn't seem to want to, it tends to want to flatten out right here and not give me quite the shape I'm looking for, because I'd like to have it stay pretty much like that here, but see more curve back here. And I can't seem to get it to stay there and actually be able to stand back and look at it and try different things. Because I want to try a number of different things just with playing with the shape to see what all kind of looks we can get and find that right line that's going to look good. So I think my next step here is let's try kind of lifting the boot lid up a little bit. I've already unbolted the hinges. I think we lift this thing up a little bit and kind of get an idea of a different line here. But we notice, I think, if we step back and look at it, that there's a bit too much of a curve here, a bit more through here than what I would like to see. But it still gives me kind of an idea of something better to look at. Of course, my window's not going to be this high up. It's going to have to be down in here somewhere. But developing the shape a little bit more. Now, of course, one of the other things I need to take into account is the width of the new track width. Since the Mustang II is wider than the MGA, this is pretty much the size tire I'm going to end up running right here. So we know, we look at that, you know, basically I got to come out roughly 3 inches, 3 to 3.5 inches to cover that tire. So I got to think about that in the whole overall scheme of everything. Now I already know that my boot lid is going to have to be shorter. So I do have a spare boot lid that's got some holes in it. That might be a good one to just go ahead and cut that up. Shorten it a little bit, maybe initially take about 6 inches out of it. And then once I get it all where I want it, then I can reskin the deck lid to fit the new shape. But before we go down that road of actually cutting another one of these down, I thought, well, let's go a little higher and see what it looks like. And aesthetically, the overall line across here is actually looking pretty decent. I actually kind of like that. I just don't know about the rear window, how big it's going to have to be to get it low enough height-wise here, and how much boot lid I'll have left. But that line actually looks pretty neat right now. But this other deck lid is not really a good deck lid, so I'll go ahead and cut it up, try that out, play with some more ideas. So now I tried lifting it up just a little bit further, getting a different line here. This is the stage. You got hours here. This is hours of just sitting back, staring at it, and just trying different things. So let's try this, let's try that, let's move this, let's move that, until I get a line, something that I think can actually look good and that I can actually think I can make happen. But this is a real time-consuming portion of it, but it makes all the difference in the world once you start actually cutting, if you've really thought it through and you know how you're going to tackle it, and you know it won't just look tacked on and hacked together. All right, so here I got my spare boot lid, and this thing's had some holes in it where somebody had put a luggage rack on it at some point, and it's got dents in it and stuff. It's not that smooth. The inside of it is not, it's not the greatest deck lid. Salvageable still, but it's not the greatest one. Now my thought here is this curve maybe a little bit too much. And if we cut some out of the middle portion here, maybe we'll take some of that curve out of it and make it short enough to fit within here and give us a much better idea of what we're going to end up with. Now the problem is do I want to try to salvage the skin or just take the skin off, work with the framework only and reskin the whole thing? Now if I decide to go ahead and reskin the whole thing, I'm not going to pull the skin off now. I'll cut through and leave the skin on so that it butts back together to give me that good line that I can see when it's on the car. But I would start with probably taking this X brace out. Now I don't quite know how much I need to take out of this yet, but I had stuck a piece of tape here when I looked at it on the various heights and figured 6 inches roughly puts me into the ballpark of where I think it's going to work at most of the heights that I was looking at. So basically we'll just come in here and find roughly the center here. Mark it and then go out 3 inches either way and make 2 lines and cut right on those lines. Now we just tack that back together. Got a little minor trimming to do first. And now once again, we're back to playing with positioning to get a line that looks right. And I might sit here for another hour before I decide what looks good and what doesn't. And I might end up cutting this and adjusting the bow in this a little bit and trying different things as well. So here we are a few hours later. What I did, I decided to make a spine to go across the back here as a pattern. So I just bent up a piece of 20 gauge that was about 8 feet long, then a 90-degree angle. Use my shrinker stretcher to create the shape, and now I can sit there and take this and stand back, look at it, tweak on it, make adjustments until I got everything right where I think it's going to look perfect for this car. And then I can use that as a pattern to build or to check my work to make sure I'm getting the shape I actually want.